At 2:17 a.m., in the winter of 1986, a man in Northern Virginia opened his freezer and pulled out a bag of peas. Not for dinner, to stop the bleeding. His name was Mark, and 10 minutes earlier he had been living a normal life. Quiet street, mortgage, weekend barbecues, a wife who smiled at neighbors and brought cookies to school events. Now his kitchen smelled like metal and fear. On the table, under a single yellow lamp, sat a small cassette recorder. Its red light was on, still recording. And on that tape was a voice Mark had trusted for 8 years, calm, controlled, almost bored, saying words that can ruin a country and end a marriage in the same breath. "I'm not who you think I am." Mark didn't know the word for it yet. The FBI did. Illegal. A deep cover operative. The kind that doesn't just spy on a building, the kind that moves into your house. Mark met Elena at a community college language program. She was bright, charming, and slightly mysterious in a way that felt romantic, not alarming. She said she was born overseas, moved around as a kid, and didn't like talking about her childhood. That sounded normal. Plenty of people have painful pasts. They married. They bought a small split level. They built a life that looked boring from the outside, which is the safest kind of life there is. For years, Elena was almost perfect. Too perfect. She never talked about old friends, never had family photos, never had a single childhood friend who called. If anyone asked where she grew up, she answered smoothly, but the details never stayed consistent if you listened closely. Mark didn't listen closely, because when you love someone, you help them keep their secrets, until the secrets start keeping you. The change didn't happen all at once. It happened in small fractures. Elena started locking the study door to grade papers. She began taking late-night walks alone, even in freezing weather, even when the streetlights made the whole neighborhood look like a stage. And one night, Mark woke up at 3:04 a.m. and found her standing in the hallway in the dark, holding a glass of water, staring at the front door like she was waiting for someone to knock. When he asked what she was doing, she smiled too quickly. "Couldn't sleep," she said. Then she went back to bed. Mark lay there listening to the quiet of his house, suddenly aware of something he had never noticed before. His home didn't feel private anymore. It felt observed. Then came the argument that cracked everything open. Garbage. It was stupid, petty, the kind of thing couples fight about when they're tired. Mark was cleaning the garage on a Saturday morning when he found a trash bag wedged behind a shelf, half hidden like someone who didn't want it seen. It wasn't normal trash. It was tied too tight. Heavy. Careful. When he called out, "Elena, what is this?" Her footsteps came fast. Too fast. She appeared in the doorway, eyes locked on the bag like it was a weapon. "Don't open that," she said, not annoyed, not embarrassed. Afraid. Mark froze. Because there's a difference between a spouse asking for privacy and a spouse issuing an order. He looked at the bag again. Then he did the one thing that would either save him or get him killed. He loosened the knot. Inside, mixed with ordinary household trash, were objects that did not belong in a suburban garage. A second passport wrapped in plastic. Crisp foreign bills in neat stacks. A small disposable camera. And a pocket-sized book filled with tight rows of numbers. 5-digit groups, page after page. Not a diary, not a budget, a code book. Mark's mouth went dry. He stared at it, trying to force an innocent explanation into his brain. There wasn't one. Behind him, Elena spoke in a voice he had never heard before. Flat, clipped, professional. "Close it." "No, please, no, what are you doing? Just close it." Mark turned slowly. Elena was standing perfectly still, hands relaxed at her sides, face calm. But her eyes weren't calm. Her eyes were measuring him, his distance from the bag, his distance from the door, his hands, his breathing. Mark realized, with a sudden chill, that he didn't know what his wife was capable of. He took one step back. "Who are you?" he asked. Elena blinked once. Then she smiled. The same warm smile she used on neighbors. But now it looked like makeup. "You're tired," she said gently. "You're imagining things." She stepped toward him. Mark stepped back again. And that's when he understood the danger. If she was innocent, she would be angry. She would demand answers. She would grab the bag and ask why he was snooping. She would not try to rewrite reality in a calm voice. Mark's heart hammered. His palms went cold. He said the only smart thing he could say. Nothing. He picked up the bag, tied it again, and nodded like a man who believed his wife. Because the moment you accuse someone like this, you don't get a second chance. He walked into the kitchen, reached into a drawer, and pulled out something he hadn't touched in years. A small cassette recorder. Old, cheap, reliable. He set it under a stack of mail, pressed record, and left it running. Then he did something harder than yelling. He pretended. He ate dinner. He asked her about her day. He laughed when she laughed. He let her kiss him goodnight. And all the while he listened for the moment her voice stopped sounding like a wife and started sounding like an operator again. At 1:39 a.m., the floorboards creaked. Elena was up. Mark didn't move. He listened. Soft steps down the hall. A pause. Then the faint click of the study door closing. Mark's pulse spiked. He slid out of bed, barefoot, and moved like a thief in his own home. The study door was shut. A thin line of light leaked under it, and through that light he heard a sound that did not belong in his house. A radio burst, static. Then a sequence of sharp, rhythmic pulses, short and long, like a coded heartbeat. Not music, not a late-night talk show, a transmission. Mark stared at the crack under the door, blood roaring in his ears. He could smell something faint. Hot electronics, warm dust, like equipment that had been powered on in secret. Then Elena spoke. Not loudly, not emotionally, with the flat control of someone reading a procedure. A single word, a call sign. Mark didn't understand the word, but he understood what it meant. His wife wasn't hiding an affair. She wasn't depressed. She wasn't going through something. She was communicating with someone who wasn't in the room, someone far away, someone who had been waiting years for her signal. Mark backed away from the door. He returned to the kitchen and sat down beside the recorder. The tape hissed softly as it turned. He stared at that tiny red light like it was the only thing protecting him. Because if he was right, then tonight wasn't just another strange night. Tonight was the night her cover slipped. And if her cover slipped in the wrong direction, Mark wouldn't need peas from the freezer. He'd need an ambulance, or a grave. And somewhere, out in the dark beyond his quiet street, someone was listening. At 2:41 a.m., the study door opened. Elena stepped into the hallway and stopped, listening. So still Mark could hear the house settling around her. A floorboard sighed. The refrigerator clicked. Somewhere outside, a dog barked once and went silent. Mark sat at the kitchen table with his hands flat on the wood, forcing his breathing to stay slow. The cassette recorder was still running under a stack of mail, its tiny motor whispering. Elena walked into the kitchen. She didn't look surprised to find him awake. That was the first moment Mark understood how far past marriage this really was. A normal wife would have asked what was wrong. A normal wife would have been scared. Elena looked prepared. "You're up," she said, like she'd been expecting it. Mark kept his voice calm. Calm was the only thing he could still control. "I heard the radio," he said. Elena's face didn't change, but something tightened around her eyes. An almost invisible shift, like a door inside her had just locked. "You didn't hear anything," she said. Same line as the garage, same trick. Erase reality, replace it with hers. Mark nodded slowly, as if he believed her. Then he said the sentence that forced the mask to slip. I opened the bag. The kitchen went colder. Elena set her palm on the counter and leaned her weight into it. Her eyes dropped for half a second, not in shame, never in shame, more like a person calculating the next move in a game that just changed. "You shouldn't have," she said quietly. Mark swallowed. "Who are you?" Elena stared at him for a long moment, then walked to the sink and turned on the faucet. Water roared into the basin, loud enough to swallow the small sounds in the room. A cover. A habit. Like she had done this before in other kitchens, in other lives. "You're not in danger," she said, her voice steady beneath the running water, "if you behave." Mark felt his stomach roll. He heard the second half of the sentence that she didn't say. "You are in danger if you don't." He forced himself to keep her talking. "You have a second passport," he said. "Cash, a code book, a radio in the study. What is this?" Elena didn't answer immediately. She watched him like she was deciding whether he was salvageable. Then she said, with calm precision, "You're asking questions you're not trained to survive." The faucet kept running. Outside, the street was dead quiet. No headlights, no footsteps, just darkness pressed against glass. Mark took a breath. "Are you KGB?" That word flicked something in her. Not fear, focus. Her eyes moved, quick and automatic, to the front window, then to the hallway, then back to him. Checking angles. Mark had seen soldiers do it on television. He had never seen his wife do it in his kitchen. Elena turned off the water. The sudden silence felt violent. "My name isn't Elena," she said. The words landed softly, but they hit like a hammer. Mark's throat tightened. The room felt smaller. "That life," she continued, nodding toward the house around them, "is a cover." Mark stared at her, waiting for tears, waiting for cracking, waiting for something human. But her voice stayed flat, professional, measured, almost bored. "The bag," she said, "was not supposed to be found. You weren't supposed to touch it. You weren't supposed to listen at doors." Mark's hands curled under the table. "So, what happens now?" Elena looked at him as if he'd asked what time it was. "Now," she said, "you become a problem." Mark's skin prickled. He kept his voice low. "A problem for who?" Elena didn't answer the way a spouse answers. She answered the way an operative answers. "For the people who built me," she said. Mark felt a chill run up his spine. "Built you?" Elena's gaze stayed steady. Identity, documents, references, work history, friends that don't exist but can be verified, a life that survives inspection. Mark's mind raced. FBI, counterintelligence, the quiet stories you heard in the background of the Cold War, names that vanished, neighbors who weren't who they said they were. He tried to keep her talking. "Why were you transmitting tonight?" he asked. Elena's jaw tightened. That was the first real sign of pressure. Then she said, "Because I got a warning." "A warning about what?" Elena's eyes drifted to the hallway toward the study. "About a sweep," she said. "About questions, about you." Mark felt his stomach drop. "You mean we're being watched?" he whispered. Elena didn't answer. She didn't have to. Mark's voice came out smaller. "So, what do you do if you're compromised?" Elena finally blinked, slow and deliberate. Then she said something that made Mark's blood run cold. "I disappear," she said, "and anything that links me to what I am disappears with me." Mark's mouth went dry. "Including me?" Elena held his gaze. "Including you becoming a witness." There it was. Not a threat screamed in anger. A statement of procedure. Mark realized something awful. If he reacted wrong, he wouldn't be arguing with his wife. He'd be negotiating with the handler's instructions. He needed time. He needed distance. He needed the tape. He forced his shoulders to relax as if he was giving up. "I won't tell anyone," he said quietly. Elena studied him. Her eyes moved over his face, searching for the smallest crack. For a few seconds, she didn't look like a villain. She looked tired. Then the mask returned. "Good," she said. "Go back to bed." Mark stood slowly. He kept his hands visible. He moved like someone trying not to startle a wild animal. He walked toward the hallway. At the bedroom door, he paused and turned his head slightly, letting his voice soften. "Elena?" Her eyes sharpened. "That name," she said, "is dead." Then she turned away and went back down the hall. Mark closed the bedroom door and leaned against it, shaking. He waited. He listened. Footsteps. The soft click of the study door. The low hum of electronics. Then, very faintly, he heard paper moving, fast, not grating, destroying. Mark moved. He slipped back into the kitchen, snatched the cassette recorder from under the mail, and shoved it into his jacket pocket like stolen evidence. His hands trembled so hard he almost dropped it. He crept to the phone. His fingers hovered over the receiver. If he called and she heard it, she would act. If he didn't call, she would act anyway. Mark lifted the receiver and dialed the only number he could think of that might get him help without explaining everything to a local patrol car. The FBI switchboard. He had no idea if it would work at this hour. He had no idea if anyone would believe him. The line rang once, twice. Then a voice answered. Tired, cautious. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Mark's throat tightened. He forced words out in one breath. "My wife is not who she says she is," he whispered. "I found a passport and a code book. She's transmitting on a radio right now. I have a recording. I think she's Soviet." There was a pause, just long enough to feel like a cliff. Then the voice changed, not louder, sharper. "Sir," the operator said, "where are you calling from? Are you safe?" Mark started to answer, and then he heard Elena's voice from the hallway, not angry, not rushed, too calm. "Mark?" He froze with the receiver in his hand. The dial tone hissed. The operator was still on the line, but Mark couldn't speak. He turned slowly. Elena stood in the kitchen doorway. In the dim light, her face was unreadable. Her eyes went to the receiver in his hand, then to the bulge in his jacket pocket, then back to his face. For a heartbeat, the entire world became silent inside Mark's skull. Elena stepped forward once, and Mark understood something in a clean, brutal flash. This was not a moment for arguments. This was a moment for exits. He did the only smart thing he could do. He dropped the receiver. The phone clattered against the counter, still connected, the FBI operator's voice spilling into the room, faint, distorted. Mark lunged for the back door. Elena moved faster than he expected, but not toward him. Toward the study. That was the second shock. She wasn't chasing him, she was cleaning up. Mark burst into the freezing night. The cold air hit his lungs like glass. He sprinted across the yard in socks, straight to the nearest house with a porch light. He hammered the door, once, twice, a third time, hard enough to hurt. A man's voice called, frightened. "Who is it?" Mark forced his voice to stay steady. "Call the police, now, please." The neighbor opened the door a crack, saw Mark's face, white, wild-eyed, and opened wider. Mark shoved past him and grabbed the phone. His fingers shook as he dialed. This time, he didn't try to sound reasonable. "This is an emergency," he said. "I'm in danger. My wife is a spy. She's destroying evidence right now." Behind him, through the window, Mark saw movement at his own house. A light in the study flickered, then another light, then darkness. A minute later, the back door of Mark's house opened. Elena stepped out into the night. She wasn't carrying a suitcase. She wasn't running. She moved with the calm speed of someone who had rehearsed this 100 times. She crossed the yard, not toward the street, toward the trees behind the houses. Then she vanished into the dark. By the time the first cruiser arrived, Mark was sitting at the neighbor's kitchen table with the cassette in his hands, shaking so badly his teeth clicked. Officers ran to Mark's house. They moved fast. They shouted. They cleared rooms. They found the study. They found the radio equipment. Half disassembled, wires cut, parts missing. They found the trash bag, emptied. They found burn marks in the sink. Wet ash spiraled down the drain. And they found one last thing that made every officer in the room go quiet. A small, damp square of paper stuck to the bottom of the garbage can. Half burned, half readable. Rows of 5-digit groups. A code. Proof. Hours later, when FBI agents from the Washington field office arrived, they didn't treat Mark like a jealous husband. They treated him like a man who had stepped on a landmine and lived long enough to describe it. They listened to the tape in a closed room. The hiss of the cassette. Mark's breathing. Elena's voice. Flat, professional. The phrase, "My name isn't Elena." The line that turned the whole case from theory into a hunt. "I disappear, and anything that links me to what I am disappears with me." An agent rewound it and played it again. Then he looked at Mark and said quietly, "You did the right thing calling." Mark didn't feel like he'd done the right thing. He felt like he'd survived the first wave, because now he understood what was coming next. If Elena was an illegal, she wasn't alone. She had a support chain, handlers, signals, safe houses, people who would wake up tomorrow and realize she was gone, and realize she had been forced to run. And when that happens, someone always asks the same question. Did she run clean, or did she leave a witness behind? Mark stared at the cassette in his hands, feeling the weight of 8 years collapse into a single night. Outside, the sky began to pale with the first hint of morning. And in the quiet, Mark realized the scariest truth of all. He wasn't just leaving a marriage behind. He was walking into a war he never knew existed. A war where the enemy had already lived in his house, slept in his bed, and smiled at his neighbors. And somewhere out there in the dark, Elena was still moving. Not as a wife, as an operator. And she wasn't going to stop until she knew exactly how much Mark had told them.
Brown stairwell, peeling paint, stale smoke. Your match flares once and it's cloak on coat. You pass the file, folded in my palm. 3 stamps, 1 name, spelled a little wrong.
Wiretaps in the winter,
buzzing over bread, radio low, talking from the west. You laugh too loud, then your face goes blank when the pipes knock twice like a neighbor's thanks. We talk about June like it ever was warm. Queue lines and coupons, rain soaking the phones. Your coat smells of diesel and the river at night. You say trust is a luxury, but your hand holds mine tight. Thick coat, false name, passport photo in a cheap frame, church clock, one chime, warm bread line, cold deadline, steam goes gray glass, coffee cooling in a chipped glass, your face in smoke, signal hidden in a bad joke, dead drop at dawn, we pretend we're strangers walking, eyes to the ground. Every heartbeat louder than the sound. Drop that down. If I blink, the whole game's gone. Say nothing at all. Say not at all. At all. Park bench, peeling paint, saints watching from the cracks, saints, two kids throw stones, laugh cuts through the bugs and phones, matches, then book, one wrong word is all it took, you pass, I freeze, paper trading hands like a breeze, we pretend we're strangers walking on, eyes to the ground. Every heartbeat louder than the sound. Drop that dawn. If I blink, the whole game's gone. Say nothing at all. Say, was it you who missed the turn, or is my cover set to burn? Street lamp humming, distant train. Which of us will not remain?